one of the first questions we get a lot is like, what's the difference between investigation and threat hunting? So like the way I like to look at it is really the difference in approach, right? So investigation it's a reactive sort of thing you're doing, right? That's you responding to alerts or detections, right? And you're confirming that this is suspicious activity either is, a true positive or a false positive or something like that. You're going through a disposition. There's an investigation involved with that where you're going through, corresponding log sources and stuff, or, enriching the data to try to figure out whether or not it is a true, threat. Whereas the threat hunting, again, it's proactive, right? You're looking for the threats without any alert backing it already. You don't know that something's there. You're sort of assuming that it's there and going looking for it. The trigger, right? It's different. Yes, go ahead.
Hey, Kevin, just the way you sort of describe it, an investigation is kicked off from an alert, meaning that you're sitting in a portal, you're sitting in a console somewhere, and either you get a text message, a Teams message, or an alert appears in the console that says, hey, threat activity, some worm, some virus, some firewall, whatever. You kick off an alert and you're like, wow, let me do an investigation and see what this alert means. And the threat hunting, the way you describe it is, wow, there's just a mound of data or there's a bunch of information we're going to be looking at.
Yeah, absolutely. Investigations are a lot of times sort of driven by alerts and detections and stuff, but I've definitely seen investigations kick off not from that, right? Like an investigation can be kicked off based on, a tip from the FBI saying, hey, we got, data showing that, the Russians had hacked you, because we had sort of taken down their infrastructure and stuff and seen your IP address in there. Or it could be from maybe a really high-ranking employee, suspiciously resigned, and all of a sudden, there's an investigation triggered, into what they may have done or not done on their computer and stuff like that. Threat hunting involves investigation, right? So when you're kind of doing threat hunting, you're going through an investigation. But the difference is that it's like hypothesis-based versus like that alert-driven, right? So you're thinking about a lot of times, like, what if something's happening? What does it look like? And then, is that there? The goal is different, right? You're finding the unknown versus sort of like resolving an existing sort of thing that's going on or that's been found. You're looking for those hidden and emerging threats. The mindset is different. I find a lot of folks that do things like incident response or, even like SOC triage, things like that as well, or really anybody who does cyber analysis. Like everybody's got that analytical and forensic mindset, which definitely helps with threat hunting. But in the threat hunting, you really have to be more like curious and sort of like exploratory. And you also have to be, more open to sort of like thinking on your own, like thinking about how things might work if somebody was taking advantage of it. And it takes more of like the hacker mindset than you would traditionally see, right? Because you're trying to think of like, well, how somebody would exploit the system, what would it look like? And they're trying to find that. The tools are similar a lot of times, right? Like everybody's using logs, everybody's using, forensics tools, stuff like that to look at individual artifacts, potentially to examine them. If you're looking at a system snapshot or you're looking at a specific piece of memory that's carved out, looking for that threat. The difference I find is like threat hunting can be a lot more based on like usually like pre-existing queries and stuff. Like a lot of forensics tools, like they'll already have like things built into them to sort of show you what you need to see when you're doing an investigation a lot of times. Because you're kind of like when you're doing incident response, a lot of times you're going through like a checklist, right? Like I'm making sure these things are okay. Whereas sort of in the threat hunt, you're kind of more free-formed. There are also a lot like you can do like attack-based threat hunting. So if you're familiar with like MITRE ATT&CK, looking at how like existing, known attack paths work and then trying to see if they're in your environment. And then the outcomes are different, right? One is sort of like post-incident analysis, containment, and recovery. And the other one is like potentially improved detections, reduced dwell times in your environment if you're hacked, new insights into what's going on.